And YouTube, thank you for returning for another segment of the AV Club. I'll be your host again for the day, Cornell Westside, and today we'll be covering The Last of Us Episode 2. But before we begin, if you can go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button and turn on notifications so that you can get all the notifications for all of our new videos for The Last of Us and any other videos that we create. Now, this week's episode was a little bit slower than last week's, but had a lot more information that we needed to know about the virus and why Joel has avoided it so far. We also get the explanation for why Ellie is so important to the mission and why they're smuggling her to the Fireflies location on the West Coast. But to me, they've been giving me everything I've wanted. This has probably been the best adaptation from a video game into a TV series so far, so I have no complaints and everything has been great so far. So without further ado,
check it out then.
Now, this week's episode, we start off in Jakarta where we get a little bit more backstory about where the virus started from. Now, if you remember back in episode 1, there was a broadcast on the radio talking about violence breaking out in Jakarta, which was probably the incident that we're getting explained about in episode 2.
Jakarta. Where is that, Middle East? Doesn't ring a bell.
Now, a current theme I'm seeing is that each week they're revealing more and more about where the virus actually started from in the beginning of the episode, to which last week there was in 1968 where they talked about where the virus could have came from. And this week we're saying in Jakarta in 2003, it looks like, where the virus actually started. We start the episode with them picking up Professor of Mycology, Ibu Ratna, and I'm sorry if I butchered that name, but Ibu Ratna, and take her to a mycology lab where they have a person who was shot because she was showing signs of being infected when she was bitten by a person who was at a local flower factory. And when she's presented with the slides, she's immediately dismissive of what's going on because she, just like the professor in the first episode, was dismissive of the fact that fungi can grow in humans, and the fact that this slide was used by something that should be used by a human cell rather than a fungi cell. She immediately is like, what's going on? They assure her what they're showing her is real, and just to make sure that she's convinced, they show her a deceased specimen, the woman that was shot dead from the flower factory. Now, the health director just gave her some of the worst advice when he tells her that when she feels sick to run out. I don't know about y'all, but if someone's feeling sick when they're inside a very infectious fungus containment center, I do not want them to run out of the containment center if they're starting to feel sick. Call me selfish, but I think that's why they call it the containment center. That's just me. After seeing the bite on the leg and seeing how infected it is, she now begins to drink the Kool-Aid a little bit and begins to wonder how a human could do something like this. She then cuts open the leg to see that cordyceps are growing inside of it and is pretty freaked out by that sight. What's even more crazy is that when she cuts the cordyceps out of her mouth, she sees that they're still moving, which shows that the cordyceps are still alive inside of her body. And if they hadn't shot her, she would be what we call a runner, which is like the first stage of the infected. The next scene, we get the explanation of how it all started in the flower factory. Now, this doesn't surprise the professor at all. She calls flour one of the best substrates or catalysts for a fungus to grow. And with a little mixture of global warming and a city full of flour factories that are being used to process flour, which has a lot of ovens, which heats up the city, this is actually real life one of the best places for the virus to actually begin. The professor is informed that after the attack happened, that all of the infected that were taken in for observation had become infected, bitten initially, were taken in and became infected and were shot dead. And there were 14 people who were unaccounted for. After that, the doctor pretty much just shudders in fear. And after asking her advice on what they should do to contain the virus, she immediately says, and then she pieces out to go be with her family because that means she would die along with everyone else. Now, she says this because everyone has been eating the flour from the factory, which means that everyone has a chance of being infected. Which brings me to another point. Flour was another low-key theme in the first episode because Joel and Sarah were never able to find anything that had flour in it in the house and never ate that cake that would have been made, obviously, of flour. And due to Joel being on a quote-unquote Atkins diet, avoided those sweet butter biscuits.
Not my mama biscuits.
Which obviously would have put them in probably a bad predicament since it had flour in it.
She must not have known, Martin.
Look at Joel showing us the importance of dieting.
She was on this strict diet.
If they would have ate the flour, who knows? Maybe they would have been prone to the infection a little bit more.
It's just your mama's raisin butter biscuits. That's all it is.
We may never know, but good job, Joel.
You so wise.
So we get a shot of Ellie looking like she's in the womb with a butterfly flying over. And actually, butterflies is something that I've seen with Ellie back in the first episode too, which could be a theme here. I don't know. We're going to keep looking and see if we can see a connection there. But yes, in this scene, it looks like she's like waking up in the Garden of Eden. Maybe it's because she's a symbol of hope now that we know she's the cure for the vaccine going forward. Maybe she is.
Jesus, please save us.
One thing we do know is that Joel is not convinced yet.
Show us your arm.
He explains that Marlene found her after she had been bitten, and for some reason she didn't kill her and took her in and tested her for a couple of days to see if she would turn or not. And that's where we found them in episode 1. There's going to be a feature episode where they explain everything that happens here. Those who play the video game know that they touch upon it in the DLC pack where she and Riley are attacked at the abandoned mall. Joel's still dealing with his PTSD while Tess is sitting here trying to convince him that getting Riley to the Firefly checkpoint could be the best thing for them. But Joel is just not convinced and wants to go back after everything that's happened. And here goes that theme of flour again. I found it interesting that they had her eat a sandwich, and we now know that flour is what carries the virus. Maybe it's because she's the cure, that she's immune to it. So I'm sure the rations are pretty scarce in these quarantine zones. They talk about the fact that they have to use smugglers to get exotic items like chicken. Kind of hits on with today's chicken egg prices, right? Then she makes a joke about how they aren't the smugglers that they use to get these type of items, so then she pisses off Tess. The next monologue Tess gives is kind of important to me because Tess was a badass in the game. She pretty much murked everybody she came across, including Robert, who we seen in the first episode. And after one solid monologue, she breaks Ellie into telling her everything about the vaccine, and we get a scene straight out of the video game.
Hey.
Why are you so important to Marlene?
What was the plan? Let's say that we deliver you to the Fireflies.
There's a Firefly base camp somewhere out west.
Marlene, she said that they have their own little quarantine zone.
With doctors. They're working on a cure.
With doctors, they're still trying to find a cure.
I've heard this before.
We've heard that before, huh, Tess?
And whatever happened to me is
It's the key to finding the vaccine.
Whatever happened to me is the key to finding a vaccine.
It works everywhere.
Fuck you, man. I didn't ask for this.
You and me both.
Hey, fuck you, man. I didn't ask for this.
Me neither.
Let's just finish it.
Joel, I mean, we've come this far. Let's just finish it.
And after that, the motley crew sets off to the Capitol buildings to find the Fireflies.
We can hit the Capitol building by sunrise.
Yeah, looks different in the daylight, huh?
Yes, it does, because it surely was raining on the video game. Get an explanation to why bombing all the cities didn't work and why there's still infected running around.
They hit most of the big cities like this. They had to slow the spread somehow.
We bombed the hell out of the surrounding areas to the quarantine zones, hoping to kill as much of the infected as possible.
Worked here, but didn't in most places.
Get a shot of an empty restaurant, which I thought was a cool mirror scene to the full restaurant that we got in the beginning of the episode. So in a little bit of a bonding moment, Tess finally asks Ellie some questions that everyone wants to know.
How did you get bit?
So Ellie kind of alludes to the story about her getting bit in the mall by a runner. Although when she asks her if someone else was with her, she lies and said that she was by herself. Now we know this is a lie, and I think I could say this without it being a spoiler, but of course you know this is a spoiler review, but she was in fact there with Riley, and we're going to find that out in a future episode, and Riley's being played by Storm Reed. And again, this is a story that's touched upon in the DLC pack.
Nobody's gonna be coming after you, right? Boyfriend.
No.
Why you look over at Tess like that, Ellie? Is there something that you want us to know? But we could talk about that in a later video. Get into the myths, things going on in the world.
So there aren't super infected that explode fungus spores on you? Or ones with split open heads that see in the dark like bats?
Talk about infected that can throw fungus spores on you and ones that can see in the dark. And we know in this episode that there are ones that can see in the dark, and oh, believe me, there are ones that can throw spores at you. For those who have played the video game, you know of them oh too well. They're what we call bloaters. Now, I may do a video on the survivability of this world, and all I'll say is that the fact that bloaters are walking around, it's pretty much done with. Like, you wouldn't be able to survive this apocalypse. Like, this is not like The Walking Dead where, like, there's just they die after you kill them. These are some special type of infected. That's all I can say.
Hoping to kill as much of the infected as possible.
What the hell was that?
What was that?
Given the events later on in the episode, I feel like they should have took this time just to tell her what clickers were. At the very least, they didn't have to tell her about bloaters, but they should have at least told her that there is such a thing as clickers.
What's wrong with its face?
That's what years of infection will do to you.
So what, are they blind?
Sort of. They see you when sleeping.
Like bats?
Like bats. If you hear one clicking, you gotta hide. That's how they spot you.
See, that was so easy. Even you could do it. Because you did do it, Tess, right? Yeah. Uh-oh, I see water. Please don't say it, Ellie.
Hey, I can't swim.
Well, I don't know how to swim.
Now, this was the one thing I absolutely hated about the game. You had to find a board somewhere along the game, and The Last of Us doesn't allow to give you a lot of direction, so you pretty much just spent probably like half an hour trying to find some flat board, if you were me at least, to get Ellie across some body of water a lot of the time.
Seriously?
See, somebody knows my pain, seeing how I was controlling you, but anyway.
In for one night, and I would like your finest suite, please.
Yes, sir. I'd like your finest suite, please.
Why, yes, you can take my luggage upstairs.
Yes, ma'am. Would you like me to take your luggage?
You are a weird kid.
Weird kid.
You're a weird kid.
She was born 6 years after the apocalypse, Joel. You'd be weird too. At this point in the video game, you're working your way through 2 broken skyscrapers, and we see them in a similar but different situation. And they give Tess a task just to give us a reason to have Joel and Ellie have a heart-to-heart conversation.
Nice knife.
That good old pocket knife. What's important here is that Ellie talks about if Joel had to ever kill infected before. And what's important about that is I think that we're going to have to figure out that Ellie wound up having to kill her friend Riley, who got bit at the same time which she got bit, but Riley turned and Ellie didn't. All I'll say without giving away too much. And we learn a few more things about the cordyceps.
They're connected.
You step in a patch of cordyceps in one place, and you can wake a dozen infected from somewhere else. Now they know where you are, now they come.
Yeah, survivability is looking really low right now. We just found out that all of the infected are now connected to each other. So if you run into one and kill him like a mile away from like a horde, that whole horde now knows exactly where you are and can like pinpoint exactly where you are and come find you. They can't take the long way, so they take a shortcut through the British Museum, which is straight out of the video game. One thing that I think they changed that was addressed in the next scene is that I believe even when the infected are like completely dead, which means that the cordyceps have just taken over and eaten their entire body, they still give off what they call the spores, which I touched on in the first video. And the spores can even infect you kind of like an airborne virus. So when you come across this part in the video or this part in the episode where they come across these just bone dry things, I believe in the game they can still give off spores, and if you breathe those in, then you would still be able to get the cordyceps virus and turn, which is why they use gas masks in order to avoid this in the video game. But again, in the show, I don't think that they're doing this at all, or at least for this season. Now, if we add that to the list of survivability, now we have giant bloaters and clickers that can see in the dark and throw spores at you. We have cordyceps that can be stepped on and be heard from a mile away. We have cordyceps that can actually now give off spores, which we talked about before, after they've decomposed the entire body. So it's pretty hard out here to survive. Not to mention that in the next couple scenes and in the last episode, we've seen that they're pretty fast as well. I mean, they're probably a step down from World War Z zombies, which we know that if they come to fruition, it's annihilation.
What the fuck did that?
It's been ripped apart. Body's pretty fresh.
Is that bad?
Now I understand that they wanted to give the audience watching a big reveal to what the clickers were, but Jesus Christ, I wish they would have just told her what the clickers were instead of in 5 minutes giving her a complete surprise knowing that she's going to scream and make noise. I mean, these things are pretty ugly, but I digress. Now, I always wondered what a real life fight with a clicker would be like, because Joel got really close with those clickers in the video game, and they definitely did the same thing in the show, so it lets me see that you can get pretty close to these things and not get bit a few times. Though we have to add this to, now that the clicker has found you, we now know that a whole horde of cordyceps zombies can now know from a mile away that you're in here fighting these other clickers, and whatever other clickers are in the building will find you too. So you have an impending doom once you start fighting this.
You fucking kidding me? I mean, if it was gonna happen to one of us.
Yeah, so that camera panned on Tess a little bit too fast. Something's up here. Actually, let this be a lesson to you. In any zombie apocalypse, if you try to help a person and they brush you off very fast and say, go ahead and do something else, they're infected and they're hiding it. Know this, it happens all the time.
Just go watch her.
Oh, she gonna cry in the car.
That was scary. This is wood.
Is that everything you hoped for?
Jury's still out.
So is that everything you hoped for?
Jury's still out.
But man, you can't deny that view.
But man, can't deny that view.
Let's get there before it's dark.
In other words, I think I have about 2 hours, give or take. So if y'all don't want me to come after y'all, let's get to where we gotta go right now.
What if we get there and they're all dead?
They won't be.
But how do you know?
I just do.
Well, Ellie kind of called that one because in the show, when they got there, all the Fireflies were dead. Find out that one of the Fireflies were infected and went and turned and killed all of the rest of the soldiers that were there as well. Now, this is a departure from the game because in the game, Fedra soldiers actually came in and killed all of the Firefly soldiers as suggested in the television show by Ellie.
Maybe they had a map or something to tell us where they were going.
Okay, well, I mean, one of them's gotta have a map on them, right?
Where was this lab of theirs?
Oh, she never said. She only mentioned that it was someplace out west.
Where did Marlene say that she was taking you? Ellie!
I don't know, just west.
Now, we tried. Let's just go home.
I'm not going anywhere.
It's over. We are going home.
This is not my fucking home!
This is my last stop.
What?
Our luck had to run out sooner or later.
I'm staying. I mean, our luck had to run out sooner or later.
Holy shit. She's infected.
Fuck. She's infected.
Show it to me. Oh, Christ.
Show me.
Don't touch me.
Oops.
Oops, right? I was bitten an hour ago and it's already worse. This is fucking real, Joel. You've got to get this girl to Tommy's. He used to run with this.
Joel. This is real. Joel, she's fucking real. I need you to get her to Bill and Frank's.
No.
They'll take her off your hands. They'll handle it from here.
I am not doing that.
Yes, you are. Look. There's enough here that you have to feel some sort of obligation to me, so you get her to Tommy's.
You will. I never ask you for anything, not to feel the way I felt, not to really shut the fuck up because I don't have time.
As you can see, the emotion captured in the game is captured in the TV show as well. I was wondering if they were going to kill off Tess. That was something I was holding off from talking about last week because she seems like she was going to be such a big character. But I mean, there wasn't too much you can do to deviate from the story that really made sense. But I did think she was going to make it to at least episode 4 or so. I think HBO just wanted to end the episode because they have Joel go ahead and shoot one of the infected, which causes now a herd of infected to rise from about a mile away where they were just a few hours ago. And now they should be to the Capitol in about a minute, they said. That shows you how fast these infected people run. I mean, how many of y'all can run a mile in a minute? I'll wait.
They're here.
What are you doing?
Making sure that they don't follow you.
This prepares herself to become the sacrificial lamb so that everyone else can get away. And they weirdly end this scene with her trying to flick the lighter, but then she kisses one of the zombies so like the cordyceps go into her mouth. And it was a cool visual for the cordyceps, but I just didn't understand it. It was a complete deviation from the game, and that's okay, but just that was weird that she would let that happen regardless of her fate, just because that was nasty. One thing I didn't mention is that her hands were trembling because she was getting closer and closer to turning. So maybe the cordyceps just wanted to connect with each other before. I don't know. Maybe that's the best connection I got. They wanted to connect the stronger that they were coming out of her. So that's why she did the kiss. I don't know. So the show actually did Tess a favor by blowing her up, because in the game, she did a shootout with about 30 to 40 soldiers. All those soldiers that I just showed you that she looked at in the window, she did a shootout with them, and you basically are in like the other room just listening to it happening. So, you know, Joel and Tess definitely have like a love connection, and he gets to in the game just basically just hear her be murdered by a bunch of Fedra soldiers. And no, she didn't turn before they killed her, because you can hear her in pain as she's being shot. And that brings us to the end of the episode. So as we wait for episode 3 to air, go ahead and tell me some of your favorite moments for episode 2, and tell me some of your predictions for episode 3 and the rest of the season. Once again, thank you for listening and viewing. If you can go ahead and hit that subscribe, like, and hit on those alerts so you can get all of our alerts when we get new videos, I'd appreciate that. And I look forward to talking to you all next week. Talk to you soon.